This is Jacob with Edge Products. We're going to walk you through the installation on the brand new EZ module that's built specifically for the 2024 and newer L5P. We got this beautiful High Country 24 here in our dyno cell, and we're going to walk through this plug and play install of this inline module. So the kit itself will come with this wiring harness, and then we've got our module that mounts underneath the hood, and then the EZ itself will be controlled through a smartphone app that you'll download in your Android or your iOS stores. So first of all, we're going to start this install by popping the hood, and we're going to disconnect our negative terminals on both our batteries so that we can make sure that the PCM and all the electronics in the vehicle don't have any power, so we can go ahead and start with the installation of this harness. All right, so with any of our device installs, we always disconnect the negative terminals on the battery. So using a 10mm socket, we're going to loosen up this negative post. Bring that connector loose. We're going to tuck it down so we make sure that it doesn't come in contact with that post. We're going to move over to your passenger side, where you'll find it's a little bit tougher to access what you need here. There's a 13mm nut on each side of this brace that needs to be removed so we can get access to that 10mm nut on that terminal. So again, just basic hand tools for this install. Most of you are going to be able to install this really easily in your own driveway. It is all plug and play. Break these bolts loose. Now the EZ was developed for this truck to help add a little bit of power. And then we've also done a lot of work with our throttle sensitivity settings so that you have some control over your pedal lag, which is something that GM puts into these trucks that can be a little bit frustrating in day-to-day driving and towing. Have that delay when you first roll into the throttle before anything really happens. So the EZ app allows you control over both power and throttle pedal feel. So it'll have 5 power levels. Set that bracket aside. Now we've got access here to our 10mm on our battery terminal. Get that one disconnected. But like I said, you're going to have 5 different levels for power, with gains as much as 63 horsepower and 140 foot-pound of torque in level 5. And then there are 7 different pedal settings, and you can set those pedal sensitivities in each one of the power levels. So if you like running power level 5 but don't want a real aggressive pedal, you can turn that down to one of the lower pedal settings. It's a little tamer. Vice versa, if you like running power level 1 but want a more aggressive pedal, you can do that at 2, and all that can be controlled through the app itself. We'll get to that at the latter part of our install, but what we're going to do now is take this harness, tap into some sensors here under the hood. Unlike some of the other inline modules that are currently available for this 24 L5P, they are only tapping into the fuel rail pressure, which will improve your horsepower. Unfortunately, without tapping into some of the other sensors under the hood, they're not controlling any of the airflow requirements. They're not monitoring anything that's going on under the hood, so they're just haphazardly adding a bunch of rail pressure to increase your power, but they're also increasing your soot load, they're increasing your regen cycles, and there's a couple of the competitive devices that we tested that are actually pegging that sensor so they don't even know what rail pressure they are running or what they're adding to the vehicle, which is really something that's just not the way we prefer to do our modules. We like to make sure that we're staying within safety limits, and that we can tune it so that it can be emissions friendly. That's another thing that we do inside this dyno cell. We're here, we do our full emissions testing so that we can be sure that this device does not harm your emissions equipment, doesn't add to your regen frequencies. We can tune these to be safe and efficient, and then release them as 49 state compliant emissions friendly products. And then we also go to the lengths of creating application and working with CARB so that we can get our EOs. So this device will be going through the CARB process so we can get an EO for 50 state compliance. But first we're going to tap in to a couple of sensors under the hood. So you've got this big long harness that can be a little bit daunting, but really it is very straightforward. We just have a couple of piggyback connections to make. So we've got our connection here. This will be for our main module that will mount here on the fuse panel. We've got a ring terminal that we're going to go to a positive terminal underneath this cap on the driver's side battery. We've got a connector for our VGT controller. We've got a connector for rail pressure, mass airflow, and then our map sensor. All that is right here on top of the engine, so it's really easy to get to. So we'll reposition the camera so you can get a better idea of the sensors that are on this passenger side of the engine, and then we'll come back over to the driver's side, and then we'll even go into the cab so that we can tap into our accelerator pedal position so that we can get the control over that throttle pedal. All right, our first connection we're gonna make is right here on the mass airflow sensor that's located right on the back of the airbox lid. So this is really easy to get to. You can see that there's a red keeper on this connector. We need to pull out using your fingernail or a pick tool. You pull that red keeper back towards the driver's side of the engine. That'll allow you to depress on that connector and disconnect it. And then we'll take our EZ harness that we'll route at a later time and make our connections. We've got our two-way connector here. One end is going to plug directly into that sensor. Make sure you get it to click and then close the red keeper on our harness. And then on the other end, we're going to connect into the truck's engine harness. Make sure again that it clicks and that you close that keeper to keep it attached. Then we will move on to our next sensor. All right, with our the mass airflow sensor connection made, we're going to move on to our map sensor. This is where we're gathering boosted data, or the truck gathers that. Again, there's another keeper on this that holds it closed. You know, pull that keeper back with your nail, and then you can depress the tab that's directly underneath it to unplug that sensor. Our harness will have that exact same connector in it. Press it on until it clicks, close the keeper, and then make the other end of that connection here. All right, with our map sensor connection made, we're moving on to the fuel rail pressure sensor. Now you can see that we only have two more connectors to make on this harness itself. One is an 8-wire connector, and then one is the smaller connector that goes to the VGT. But when you're looking at the top of this engine, it can be a little bit confusing because there's a bunch of sensors up here. The fuel rail pressure sensor is located right on the top of this intake elbow manifold, and it's the connector that's in the center. So it'll have a red keeper on it. You need to pull that keeper back with your thumbnail, and then you can depress on the center of that connector to get it to disengage and unplug. Like the other sensors, we're just plugging right in. One end goes directly into the sensor, and then the other end goes into our factory harness. Make sure they click, and then close that red keeper. The last step under the hood here with the harness itself is plugging into our VGT controller that's located right on the front of the turbocharger. This connector has a gray keeper that we're going to pull back, and then we can pull that connector to disengage it and then piggyback our harness in its place. One end onto the controller, make sure you hear it click and close that keeper. The other end into the harnesses, same thing, hear it click, close that keeper. So that completes all of our major connections here under the hood. All right, so we've moved into the cab. We're here under the dash. We're gonna connect into our throttle pedal so we can adjust that pedal sensitivity. So you've got this connector that's directly above your gas pedal. There's a red keeper on the side of it that you need to pull back, and then you can depress on the tab of that connector and unplug it. We've got our new EZ harness, the in-cab portion of the harness. And we'll do the same thing. Connect it onto the pedal. Hear it click. Depress that tab. And then we'll connect these two harnesses together. Close that keeper. Make sure that it's tight. And then we're going to route our wire over towards the driver's side of this underbody. And we are going to run our access link, which is this green connector. We're going to run this through the firewall using the hood release grommet that's right up against the driver's side on the firewall itself. So you can basically pull that grommet out towards you and put a small slit in it with a precision knife. And then you'll be able to run this connector right through that part of the firewall out to the engine bay. All right, it's kind of tight quarters down in here, so we're gonna do the best we can to get this on video for you. But you've got your hood release latch cable routing right here. You've got this grommet that goes directly through the firewall right here. This is where we're gonna pull that grommet out towards us so we can put a slit in it to run that access link through the firewall. All right, so we've fished our access link through the firewall. It is worth noting that this is the most difficult part of the installation. GM has done a really good job of insulating the inside of that firewall to keep the noise down in the cab, which makes it difficult to get access to come through it. So if you can conquer getting that wire fished through the firewall, the rest of this is a breeze. You'll be able to see that wire has come through between your coolant reservoir and your brake reservoir. So you got to reach back in there, grab that connector, and then we're going to mount the module right here where the rest of our harness will be waiting for us to complete the installation. So we'll reach in and grab that connector, make sure we route it clean so it's away from any moving parts. So we've got it here, and then we're going to make that connection on the main underhood harness here. This will only go one way. You'll see that there is a tab that needs to line up with the notch on the connector. We'll get that connection in place and get it to click, and then we're going to remove this cap over our battery by depressing the tab on the back and the front and lifting it up. Then you'll find we've got one stud here with a 10mm nut on it. We're going to remove that 10mm. We'll take that nut all the way off so we can get our ring terminal onto this stud. We're going to route that wire along through this passageway here so we can get the cap back on without cutting that wire. Sure that's tight, and we can put our cap back on. Make sure it clips in place and plug it into the main harness. Now in your kit you'll find we've got some double-side sticky Velcro type fastening that you can clean off the top of the fuse panel, attach those two strips on the back of the module, and then you can click it in place and then permanently mount that on the fuse panel. The Velcro is there so you can remove it if you need to get access down into the fuses there. And then obviously we do include some zip ties that'll allow you to zip tie this harness up out of the way so it's safe and secure, away from any heat sources. And that completes the install of the EZ for the 24 L5P. Next up, we're going to grab our smartphone. Whether it's an Android-based device or an Apple device, we've got you covered with our app. Grab our smartphone. Once we have it ready, we're going to reattach our battery posts. So we get power back into the vehicle again at 10mm. Now we won't do it for sake of time in the video, but make sure you go back and install that bracket and the 13mm bolts that goes here on the battery. But we'll move on to connecting our app to the vehicle. So we've got our module installed. We've got our smartphone ready. We've downloaded the app from the Android or the iOS store. You can look for Edge EZ in the App Store. We've also got a QR code in the instruction manual that'll give you easy access to that. We're gonna move into the truck and we're gonna press and hold our start button so that we power up the truck without starting the engine. You'll see that your dash turns on. You'll have some warnings because your hood is open, etc., etc. And then we're gonna come back here to where our module is under the hood. And we're gonna open up our EZ app that you've downloaded onto your phone. It's gonna take it a minute. This EZ and the Bluetooth is gonna try and find itself. It's gonna try and access this module. You wanna be within about a foot of this module the first time you connect. After the phone and the module have been paired, this is a really quick, easy connection that can be made from in the cab. But this first time we connect, we want to be right here close to the module. So it's detected that this is the first time we've connected, and it wants to check the app and the module for updates before we go any further. So we're going to select continue. and it's going to connect to our servers through our update agent. If you don't already have an account with our update agent store, it's going to ask you to create one. That only takes a couple of minutes. Enter your information. So it's currently checking for updates to make sure that this module is up to date and that you've got the latest version of the app. From time to time, if we make changes to the calibrations or make changes with the app itself, you'll get notified of updates that need to be done. You can see that the app itself has told us that the device is up to date and that we can continue. So we're going to select back button at the top, and we're going to enter our main screen of our app. So here's your first look at the EZ app on your phone. You'll see that you've got 5 power levels listed, stock through power level 5, obviously power level 5 being the highest. That power level 5 will add up to 63 horsepower and 140 foot-pound of torque in this application. And then the power levels are just kind of incremental from there. Power level 1 is 20 horsepower and like 40 or 50 foot-pound of torque, and then we just kind of incrementally go up from there. To the right of that power level, you'll see these numbers. This is the pedal sensitivity that's within the app. So the module is currently set on power level 4, and our pedal sensitivity is set at a +5. If we want to change that pedal sensitivity in any one of these power levels, you just touch that number and it'll pull up the pedal sensitivity screen where you can go in and adjust that pedal to whichever one you see fit for your driving style. So if you like an aggressive pedal, you can turn it up to level 4, 5, even level 6, our ludicrous setting, where you have a really touchy throttle. It takes hardly any throttle input to get this thing to really jump up from underneath you. But then you can also turn it down. I personally like the feel of the Drive +2 and the Sport +3 settings. So you can go in and set that to whichever one you see fit, and you can do that for each one of the power levels. That kind of goes over all of the control you have from the app itself. There are a couple other features within the app. If you hit the hamburger menu at the left-hand side, you'll see your account information, the device information. You can check it for updates, and then there's also a link to our product store, information for getting in touch with our tech support if you ever need it. But that's pretty much the basics of the Edge EZ. Again, this is a super easy install, hence the name, the EZ. If you have further questions, reach out to our tech support team. You can reach us through social media. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have. But this is a really unique, first to market, all-in-one product that does power and throttle sensitivity. So there's no need to buy separate devices to control those two different features. Again, we've tried to create very emissions-friendly and safe tuning for a factory stock vehicle without having to flash the ECM. That's the other big bonus to the EZ. We are not leaving any trace within the system. So adding this power and making these changes by using the inline module, we're not making any permanent changes within the ECM. So that if you need dealer work done, you can just go through and unplug the harness, remove the module, disconnect that throttle sensitivity stuff. You can pull the entire product out in a matter of minutes and take it to the dealer without there being any trace in the system. When they're done with their dealer work, you can easily install it in about 20 minutes in the driveway again. So like I said, we look forward to getting your feedback on the EZ for this L5P. We've got more products in development. Obviously, we've got our Insight CTS3 support for this application. So if you want to make sure you're keeping an eye on everything going on under the hood, that Insight is a great addition that will work in conjunction with the EZ. If you have any questions, please let us know. We appreciate your business.